There's a saying that basically goes, a person's tongue can often be the whip on their own back. If that's true, then more than half of the League community just got their butts whipped. And all of this because of totally ignorant attitudes about the new Fiddlestick skin, or because of early judgments about Zahen's visuals. Alright, I'll start with the Fiddlesticks issue. Released on October 8th, 2025, with patch 25.20, the new Fiddlesticks skin belongs to a whole new theme built around a world inspired by fungi, exotic seeds, and unusual flowers. A world where champions can become hosts to a kind of parasitic plant called Flora Fatalis. This plant judges everyone who comes within reach, luring the brave and ambitious, seducing them until they plant its powerful seed of will. Together, host and plant adapt and evolve, seeking ever stronger hosts to empower and to consume. So far, the 3 known hosts that debuted in this universe are Lysandra, Soraka, and of course, Fiddlesticks. The skins turned out very good. Tons of praise for Riot's creativity, especially considering that in 2025, they've had more misses than hits when it comes to skins. Of course, among the 3 skins that dropped, without a doubt the most striking was Fiddlesticks. Dude, just look at it on the screen, then look even closer after. That fusion of flora with demonic essence is the creepiest and most sinister thing Riot has ever done since Fiddlesticks' rework. But sadly, it didn't take long for a controversy to blow up over the champion's appearance in the skin. A big part of that backlash seems to come from the fact that Fiddlesticks has a sort of very delicate, feminine looking face in this skin. Long, nicely shaped, eyelashes, and other soft features. The usual comments popped up. They turned the champ gay, woke culture, it used to be better, and so on. And I know it might sound like a joke, but it's not. You'll find those comments directly under the skin spotlight video for the lineup, and especially on the official League's social media pages. This whole reaction got even stronger because in the Star Guardian universe, Fiddlesticks was originally a girl named Harp. She was one of the members of the first Star Guardian team formed, and she was the group's battle strategist. But as more and more battles happened, she got increasingly paranoid. She pushed herself hard and kept planning for perfect strategies, but in that process, she lost her spark to the point where she got totally corrupted by darkness. So basically, in that universe, Fiddlesticks is nothing more than Harp's fear made physical after it took her completely and twisted her. Honestly, I think what Riot did was super smart. They fit Fiddlesticks into a whole new perspective that allowed for that, especially considering that in the main universe, Fiddlesticks is a demonic spirit from the dawn of creation, and spirits don't really have a defined sex, even though they may choose to represent in a physically gendered form. Even if pronouns used for Fiddlesticks are masculine, he's not exactly male or female. It's kind of like angels in the Christian Bible. Many have names and appear as men when they manifest, but they don't have a fixed sex. Take Evelyn, for example. In the beginning, she was just this shapeless spiritual shadow, which later evolved due to all the pleasurable nourishment she gained during the Rune Wars. But when peace came, she saw she needed to hunt. So she started studying what people like to see or hear and shaped a physical appearance that fits those tastes. Basically building a disguise and persona for a neutral being. When you have a monster champion that doesn't even have a sex, you get the freedom to slot them into a different universe and assign gender, as long as it's done in a narratively good, coherent way, not just to please some audience or to break norms. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like on the video, and maybe consider becoming a member to get access to a bunch of cool perks. And check out our store. There's a lot of really cool designs available and products, so go check them out. Links in the description. Anyways, back to the video. In Harp's case, it was narratively solid and coherent, and maybe in another skin line in the future, we'll see a different human form preceding Fiddlesticks. Maybe this time a boy. In that case, Harp would become the boy version. And honestly, it's not that hard to picture. I say that because Harp's look, at least in the novel, reads pretty masculine. If nobody told me she was a girl, I'd have no clue. To me, she looks like a guy, maybe even leaning a bit androgynous. Now, going back to the whole Flora Fatalis deal, one thing that's totally obvious, but a lot of folks ignore that don't bother to see, is that Fiddlesticks in this skin basically represents a carnivorous plant. Most known carnivorous plants use tricks to catch their prey. They emit pleasant smells, combine aroma with color, and shape to lure insects, then trap them for food. So in other words, Fiddlesticks' trick to attract curious people and weird bystanders is exactly a beautiful appearance. Beautiful in many quotation marks. Its purpose is predatory. It's not just the woke aesthetic choice by Riot. Right now on the screen there's a concept art for the skin skin. And once again, it's super obvious that the champion in this theme is inspired by a carnivorous plant. Models A, B, and C show that very plainly. But Riot decided to push this further, to go for something more diabolical and perverse, using the idea of a wolf hiding in sheep's clothing. That's why they introduced a feminine lure face that suggests purity and innocence, at least until the victim gets too close and it's too late. Concept D is the best result they arrived for this vision, especially the last two in the right corner. They practically show everything I just described. This idea of using beauty to hide something dark and terrifying is something a director like Guillermo del Toro does a lot in his films. Think about Pan's Labyrinth, or more recent ones like The Shape of Water and Frankenstein. And since I'm already mentioning films that might have inspired this aesthetic, I'd say without a doubt, the look of Fiddlestick's Flora Fatalis' mouth was heavily inspired by a found footage horror movie called The Taking of Deborah Logan. This scene that plays right now is super viral and iconic for everyone who digs horror stuff. And honestly, this might be exactly how Fiddlestick's Flora Fatalis feeds itself. Imagine finding your friend or family member being devoured like that. Oh my god. It's kind of interesting, right? When you stop and think about it, in most horror movies, the demon is female or takes on a female form. So watch out, guys. This story started when the Big Bad Bear, the biggest leak hunter for Riot, dropped an image of Zahin that lets us see the champion in-game. Dude, that alone was enough for the League community to explode into debates almost like politics. People started saying Riot had run out of creativity, that it was just another pretty champ to sell skins and go shirtless like Akshan, Set, and Viego. Then some folks were all Riot screwed up because they made a Darkin that was blue instead of red. There were even jokes comparing Zahin to handsome Squidward. And some not crazy people realized that the image of Zahin had contrast totally blown out. Man, just look. The picture almost looked like it came from some old 50-year-old TV. Then came the reveal in the cinematic Twilight's End, where Xin Zhao sacrificed himself to stop the greater evil, convincing Zahin, who feels compassion, to accept his choice, using Xin Zhao as his host, even if that meant Xin Zhao's life ended. Bro, that cinematic was hailed as absolute cinema, and that shifted the tide. A lot of people thought it was amazing how a champion could die to make way for another, ending some stories and leaving room for new ones. But there was still one problem. Many fans wanted to see Zahin closer to his ascended form, like the one you're seeing on the screen now. Still, I gotta admit, it would have been awesome if he got some kind of helmet that closed up and formed a silver wing faceplate, something like that artwork I even used for one of the thumbnails. For those who don't know, Zahin isn't based on any real-world bird, like a lot of people assumed. Actually, he's based on Demasia's raptors, known as silverwings, which are griffin-like species native to the Rocky Highlands north of Demacia. Maybe that even explains why one of those raptors showed up in Xin Zhao's vision in the Twilight's End cinematic. Or it could be there's a guard that tried to face the characters who became Darkin and totally got wrecked, since in Demacia there are officers who ride silverwings, something Legends of Runeterra shows too. But back to Zahin's controversy, you need to understand one thing. What happened to him is not the same what happened to Kaisa, where a concept was basically scrapped at the last minute and the character got reworked into something very different. That's what turned her from something scary and monstrous into what we have today. Zahin, though, was never intended to be a monster champion. Literally never at any point. I'm not even exaggerating. Even though Riot hasn't posted a full champion breakdown yet, you can see his creation theme and early concepts. And the character could have had other weapons, but he was always shown with a far more human look. That's because Zahin was inspired by the idea of a fallen angel. The idea was to make a Darkin that moved away from the usual traits they share, like rage and malice. So the direction for Zahin was actually more illuminated in Zen, which fits since he used to be one of the Sun Priests. His human form shows that, with a shaved head and a golden forehead accessory, plus his backstory and voice lines in the game. They even flipped the usual Darkin color logic. Normally, a Darkin is about 70% darker tones and 30% lighter. With Zahin, the ratio is reversed. Riot also added gold details to nod at his Shuriman roots, and other gold elements reference Demacian engravings and sculptures that live in Xin Zhao's memories. That might have been why he has horns and other features. Riot did toy with the more traditional Darkin colors too, as you can see in the early concepts. They also used some of that concept for the big spirit protector look in the Yunara comic, titled Yunara the Devoted Maiden of the Sanctuary, which Riot could have turned into a skin. Same goes for Yunara herself, and even Rost and Varus got similar opportunities. Now another point, the fact that Xin Zhao's look didn't change much after being possessed was part of the intention permission to innovate. Look at other Darkin examples. Aatrox fully took over his hosts. Varus started as a conflict for control between Kai and Valmar, but according to Legends of Runeterra, the three are now one being because Varus embraced all of his parts instead of fighting them. Kai and Valmar helped Varus remember and reclaim the humanity he lost. Kain and Rust have that toxic back and forth relationship, even if they secretly care about each other a little. Neferi was Riot's idea of a Darkin taking an animal instead of a human, which made her start thinking and acting more like a pack animal, believing the pack strength was the answer. Zahen didn't seize or tried to seize Xin Zhao's power. It was offered to him, practically begged for, and he accepted because he was inspired by Xin Zhao's nobility and humanity. That's a role Zahen himself once played in the past, convincing others to fight on the right path despite the madness that tempts them. And yes, Zahen uses hemomancy, which he employed in his biography / short story, where he clashes severely with Rost and is mortally wounded in the chest. His cosmic regeneration starts to heal the wound, but it's not enough, so he uses hemomancy. Also, when a Darkin takes a host's body, the possession happens through hemomantic reshaping, reforming the body for an invading soul. For anyone who thinks Xin Zhao didn't change much after the possession, you're wrong. He grew to around 7'1", something like 2 meters and 13 centimeters, and that's not counting the horns. Plus, his already impressive physical condition got a Darkin level boost. But honestly, I don't really know why Zahen appeared in that human-like form instead of his ascended form, back there in that spiritual space or inside the glaive. There are two possible explanations for that. First, it could have been based on one of his lines.
As I bound my kin, they were mortal again, for a moment. But it is past, and they are lost.
And considering that an Ascended loses their divine form, and even their celestial concept when sealed, that might make sense. Or maybe we should remember that even though Zahen was sealed, his memory wasn't affected. He still remembers a lot of things clearly, so maybe the sealing works differently for him. Or maybe he's just holding on to the image of the man who sacrificed himself for a noble cause, showing to the reclusive Darkin that there are still people willing to give themselves up in the fight against evil in the world, and that even when we're tempted by it, we must resist and stay determined in the fight, not for petty, perverse ambitions like power or control, but for the safety of others, who might never know what happened there. So maybe Zahen decided to pledge to that cause, keeping Xin Zhao's image as a tribute, and a reminder of that life he had to take in that touching sacrifice.
Be at peace, Seneschal. You have given all you can.
Now, if you have another theory about why, drop it in the comments. And well, the community ends up being kind of overly dramatic about these things. But let's wait and see who will be the next victim of this soap opera from the dramatists. See you guys in the next video.